how the deportations within the United States can affect the dating market worldwide. Today we are going to discuss. Just a few weeks after Trump got sworn as the 46th president of the United States, and one of the first mandates that he has is deporting a lot of illegal migrants that you have in the United States. There are around 13 million people, and among those, there are 100,000, a few 100,000 that are actually criminals. And the mandate is to get them out of the country, which I 100% agree. And Donald Trump assigned two particular people to such task. The first one is the border czar, Tom Homan, that, has this particular mob henchman, Luca Brazzi-like, attitude and gravitas, and I understand. And also, Trump appointed the full-time cosplayer Christine Nowen as the Secretary of Homeland Security. So these couple of people that, let's say, are, picturesque, to say the least, are the ones in charge of the mandate of deporting illegal aliens, especially the criminal ones. And they are, right on the case with an iron fist. I'm not saying, and I completely agree. I am actually pro-legal migration and anti-illegal migration, but also, I'm pro-human being and not being an asshole. But I understand that you need to be tough on specific cases like the gangs and the drug cartels and some, killers and people like that, like the people that did the thing to Lake and Riley, so rest her soul. But anyways, well, that's not what we are going to discuss today. We are going to discuss the consequences of such deportations to the daily world, because yes, there is a correlation between this particular, let's say, shift towards migration and human movement to the dating world, and that's what we are going to discuss today. The United States is the benchmark for the worldwide dating market. Why? Because the United States has a population of around 340 million people, is the richest country in the world on nominal GDP, close to 30 trillion US dollars. That is over a quarter of the worldwide GDP. So 5% of the population has almost 30% of the worldwide wealth on GDP terms. And what happens is that on one hand, you have the richest country in the world on per capita terms. There are richer countries than the US on per capita terms, but they are tiny countries, so they don't move the needle as much. You have the Emirates, you have Qatar, you have Luxembourg, you have Monte Carlo, Switzerland. Countries like that are on per capita terms richer than the US. However, the US is not only on per capita terms a quote-unquote rich country, a developed country, but also the size of the people. So 340 million people, you have at least 170 million men. The issue is that on the other side is that the market of the United States regarding dating is one of the worst dating markets in the world. So you have a lot of demand for good dating experience from the men of the United States. That, of course, since it's the richest country on per capita terms, considering their size, what happens is that the demand of good dating, they usually pay a premium. Therefore, that causes what we know on the dating world as howflation. That basically is the cost of dating. And thanks to this particular discrepancy in the US, a rich country with a terrible dating market that creates artificial extra demand. And of course, the United States, the average US man has discretionary income, an extra discretionary income that usually monetize artificially the demand for dating on the rest of the world. So not only the, this particular inflation on the US actually trickles down to the rest of the dating markets, therefore causing worldwide inflation. The mechanisms in order to create inflation worldwide, there are a lot. For instance, we have, I always mention the case of the 90-day fiance phenomenon. Many women abroad want to marry a US citizen, regardless if male or female, in order to increase their standard of living. And also, I mentioned that it's one of the handful ways in order to migrate legally to the United States. Cool on that. Also, we have the phenomenon of digital sex work like OnlyFans, or even Instagram is used for such endeavors. And what ends up happening is that the US men with discretionary income, but a terrible dating market, they do is artificially overspend on these platforms, investing a lot for little to no return, and therefore increases the expectations of the females worldwide. Remember that this digital sex work happens worldwide, happens a lot in the US by US females, but also happens in places like Brazil, in Russia, the rest of Latin America, Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia, Africa, wherever might be the case. So they are artificially monetizing and exporting the inflation to the rest of the world. So that makes harder for the average man worldwide in order to access, let's say, a reasonable rate for dating. And something that happens a lot is that many, let's say, models, or you can call sugar babies or whatever may be the case, they like to travel a lot to the US, usually the ones that are being monetizing, this, let's say, spicy work. On Instagram, OnlyFans, seeking arrangements, or just, mingling, doing an IRL strategy. Let's put it like that. And you see these women actually on Instagram, and you see them on Miami, on South Beach, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, New York, the posh places of the United States. And also some women that are, let's say, lower middle class females in their home countries. Let's say on the dating market, they are 5s and 6s. They look to migrate to the United States, where the market, since the dating market is horrible over there, these particular women go from going from 5 and 6s to 7 and 8, because let's say the average, the benchmark in the United States is an overweight women. There's a lot of overweight people in the US. The average citizen of the US has some sort of weight issue. So a female that is like a 5 or a 6 increases their value on the US market. Therefore, that creates also inflation for the rest of the world, because instead, women, what they do, some of them, I mean, this is just a cohort of females, because most women, the truly beautiful women, don't have the necessity to migrate to the US. They can just leverage their looks on their home country, regardless of the country, because the really beautiful women have access to the top-notch men on such markets, and they can do something about it either on their country or just online, and they don't go to the process of migrating to the US on the first place. Now, with this draconian, let's say, crackdown of migration on the US by Trump administration, especially these particular individuals, Homan and Christine Owen, well, that is sending a message, because I'm seeing, because the people who are being deported, are not only the criminals, but just the average people that migrated, of course, illegally without the proper documentation in order to reach the US. And of course, amongst them, there are several women that are going to be fives and sixes on their domestic markets, and the US are actually sevens. And therefore, is going to create a phenomena of more inflation on the dating market within the US, since the local dating market doesn't get you as much on per capita terms. Of course, there are a bunch of beautiful women in the US, however, there are just a drop in the bucket compared to the demand of 170 million men. Therefore, an overpriced dating market like the US, the whole country, but of course, especially in cities like Miami, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, places like that. So that becomes even more inflationary for the dating world. However, since there are more restrictions in order to enter the US for this particular, let's call it sugar babies, Instagram models, seeking arrangement conscripts, to put it like this, and what will end up happening is that more physical restriction, therefore less monetizing, and also you have repatriations to the rest of the world and hardship conditions in order to enter the US for these particular women, let's say above average on physical looks, usually not necessarily the more skillful for an H-1B visa. We already covered that issue already. Therefore, they're going to stay on their home country. So that might create, let's say, a whole deflationary tendency, or at least a whole disinflationary tendency on the rest of the world. And this is a trend that I might see happening in countries, for instance, like Colombia. We already discussed this. Combined that there's going to be more frictions in order to travel between the US and Colombia. Colombians, they're already having a harsher time traveling, just visiting as a tourist the United States. They are being denied visas. The visa process is getting more complicated. It was complicated. It's getting more complicated. So for the professionals in places like Medellin, it's going to be harsher to meet their clients in places like South Beach. We already covered that already. And what will end up happening is more frictions, therefore, the US is gonna export less this particular inflation, and that should create at least a whole disinflationary trend in Colombia, where the market has gone up considerably on the past 5 to 10 years. So there you have it, how the migration restrictions within the US that are very hard on legal terms are getting harsher right now on the US. I'm not complaining for that, but it's going to create this particular phenomenon, is poised to create this particular phenomenon of more inflation that we have regarding dating. The US is like Zimbabwe right now regarding the inflation levels, and might create at least disinflation on the dating market on the rest of the world, especially these coveted markets like Colombia, like Brazil, Russia, the Eastern European countries that don't have free visa access to the US. So there we have it. Let's see what happens. I think at least we're going to see disinflation, because the inflation levels for dating worldwide have been increasing constantly and actually very rapidly on the past, let's say, half a decade. But maybe we can see some disinflationary trend on the near future. And remember, this is just a food for thought video, so take it with a grain of salt. So let's see what happens. We're going to keep reporting those phenomena on this channel. Thank you for watching Continental Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. And if you want to work with us, continentalinsider.com. Thanks again, and have a nice day.